been carefully pinning your story, taking all your mishaps and the places that you've been misshapen. When you thought nothing beautiful could be made of you, he was painting your canvas. Make no mistake, God makes no mistakes. He loves, he saves, he waits, which is why as long as you have breath, it's never too late to trade guilt and stress and shame and grace. The very God who formed you, he wants to be with you, wants to show you a peace that surpasses, love everlasting, that no mistake is too big, no request too small, that every heart, life, story, God sees and knows them all, no matter what you've been through, no matter what you've done or where you've been, but God.
Good morning, everybody. Let's say hello to everybody watching online. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Church at Hampton Roads. Super excited to have everybody in the house and in the house via technology. I actually got a text from a friend last night, so I know she's watching. So it's kind of fun. But wow, what a weekend, y'all. This is an emotional weekend for me. So my daughter, my oldest, turned 24 yesterday. Holy cow, how is that possible? And my boys are trying to make my heart stop, I think. They have decided they're going to jump out of an airplane today. So, y'all, this mama needs some prayer this afternoon. Deep breaths. So, goodness. Lots of emotions. I'm going to just not think about that. My girls and I are going to go have lunch, and we're just going to be oblivious to that, hopefully. I hope. So, have you ever wished that your life was as predictable as a movie? I have so many times I cannot even tell you. So those love stories where, we can actually handle the drama in the middle of a love story if we know that everybody's going to end up together and live happily ever after at the end, or at least I can. Even like action movies. I can handle certain action movies, and even though we kind of jump in the middle of it, and at times when the tension's high, but I can handle it as long as I know that my favorite character is going to be alive at the end of the movie. Like, if he's not going to be alive, I don't want to watch it. In fact, I'm a huge Notre Dame fan, but I did not watch the movie Rudy for years and years and years because everybody told me I would cry. And so I just wouldn't watch it. I'm just that way. Like, it took me a lot. I love Captain America, y'all. And so that last one, when they said, this is going to be terrible, you don't want to watch it. You know what? This mama's not watching it. I want Captain America to live. So, I just wish life was that way. I wish that I could get online and I can Google all the little spoilers for my life and I can see the different scenes and okay, I'm going to make it through that. Ooh, that's going to be hard, But we as human beings, we live this life and we have to live it out whether it's good times or bad. And so what do we do when we're in a situation where we're just so discouraged by the current scene that our life is following? It's hard in those moments. And so what we're going to do this morning is we're going to be encouraged by the story of Joseph. And it's a pretty popular story, so most of you in the room, I'm sure, have heard this story before. But we're going to be looking at his life. And so we're going to turn to Genesis 37. And Joseph, he had, I think if he saw a trailer for his life, he'd be like, nope, I'm not signing up for that movie. I think he would have been, I'm out. For me, when I was little, had I seen the trailer for my life, I would have been like, nope, not at all. And I think a lot of us, are in that same boat. But Genesis 37, it says this. It starts with the account of Jacob's family line. And it says, Joseph, a man of 17, was tending the flocks with his brothers, the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah. And if I'm saying it right, we're going to say the sons of really hard words, okay? And so his father's wives, and he brought their father a bad report about them. So see, Joseph's a tattletale. Now Israel, another name for Jacob, loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because he had been born to him in his old age. And he made an ornate robe for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. So just within this couple of verses, what I see already is that there's some family dysfunction happening. Because normally throughout the Bible, when they give the family history, it always starts with the oldest son. But here, it's starting with one of the younger sons. And the fact that the father has a favorite, and it's not just that, he gets some extra treats now and then. It's no, like, here's this amazing robe for you. Like, you're set apart from all these other guys. And because he's got this ornate robe, like, it really symbolized that he's going to be hanging with dad a lot while everybody else is out doing the hard work. And so these brothers hate him. They can't say a kind word about him. So we see all this family dysfunction. But as we see the family dysfunction, it actually gives me a little bit of hope. Because here's this family, this very well-known biblical family, where we get the 12 tribes of Israel. So, God's got this amazing plan for this really dysfunctional family. And so it gives me hope in my really dysfunctional family that God still has a plan, right? And if you don't have a dysfunctional family, you might be the part of the family that's a little dysfunctional. Because I think all of us have some family members who are like that. And so in Genesis 37, verse 5, Joseph has a dream. And Joseph said Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. See, he said to them, listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it. His brothers said to him, do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us? And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. And then verse 9 says, then he had another dream. And at this point, you just want to scream, Joseph, don't go there. Like, you've already had one dream. Your brothers already hate you. You told them the dream. They hate you even more. Like, you really want to think about this. I don't think you really want to go there. It's kind of like a scary movie, and all the characters in the scary movie, they always end up, now I don't watch scary movies, but people in my family watch scary movies, so I hear about them. And so, it's always like, don't go to the shed, or don't go to the basement, right? And so in this moment, like, you just want to yell to Joseph, like, don't go there. But he does, because he's 17, and I think a lot of 17-year-olds just think they know it all. And so he just goes there. He doesn't really care about the consequences, or actually he probably didn't think about the consequences. And so he told his brothers, listen, I had another dream, and this time the sun and moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me. Now, when he told his family, his father as well as his brother, his father actually did rebuke him and said, "What is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you?" And his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept it in mind. Now in verse 12 it says, "Now his brothers had gone to graze their father's flocks near Shechem, and Israel said to Joseph, 'As you know, your brothers are grazing the flocks near Shechem. Come, I'm going to send you to them.' Joseph said, 'Very well.' So Israel says, 'Go and see if all is well with your brothers and with the flocks, and bring word back to me.' Then he sent him off from the valley of Hebron." Now see here, the dad is setting Joseph up to tattletale on his brothers again. So just that dysfunctional family, like here, the dad is totally set. The dad cannot be oblivious to the fact that all these brothers hate this one. Like surely he's not that naive. But yet he's sending him off to go tattletale on his brothers again. So when Joseph arrived at Shechem, a man found him wandering around in the fields and asked him, "What are you looking for?" And he replied, "I'm looking for my brothers. Can you tell me where they are grazing their flocks?" "They've moved on from here," the man answered. "I heard them say, 'Let's go to Dothan.'" So Joseph went after his brothers and found them near Dothan. But they saw him in the distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. Now, you know your brothers hate you if they're seriously plotting to kill you. They said, "Here comes that dreamer. Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dream." And in this moment, I see a but God in Joseph's story. Because here the brothers, they've taken him, they've thrown him into this cistern, totally intended to kill him. And then all of a sudden, there's a but God. Because it's not a coincidence, in my opinion, that this caravan of merchants comes by and they get the idea, hey, instead of killing him, let's make some money off of him. And so they sold him as a slave. And in him being sold as a slave, it saved his life, right? So I'm thinking, if I had a choice of being a slave or being killed, I think I would probably choose to be a slave, even though Joseph didn't have a choice in the matter. But here he is. His life is spared because of a but God. And in before that, so then, the brothers, they sell him, and then they go ahead and take his fancy little robe and dip it in blood, and they go home and they tell the dad, hey, he's been killed. So the dad is just distraught. He's mourning. And then in verse 36, we see this. We see meanwhile. And that meanwhile is such a powerful word because it means while this is going on over here, this is going on over here. And so what was being done over here with Joseph and where his dad is distraught and just mourning for his son, here it says, meanwhile, the Midianites sold Joseph in Egypt to Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officers, the captain of the guard. And that meanwhile is so powerful because what it is meanwhile, Joseph got sold to Potiphar, and then Potiphar, he finds favor and is in control of his whole household. And so God uses that rejection of his brothers, where he was rejected and they had plotted to kill him but decided to sell him, right? So he uses that rejection for actually the protection of Joseph's calling. So remember his dream? That he was going to be leading, that people were going to be bowing down to him. That never would have happened had he been killed by his brothers. So see, but God sending that caravan, him being sold as a slave, all of these things was really for the protection of the calling of God on Joseph's life. And so in Genesis 39, we're going to paraphrase a lot because we would be here all day long if we really read the entire story and craziness of Joseph's life. But in 39, we see where Joseph honors God. The Lord, it says the Lord was with Joseph, and he was put in charge over all of Potiphar's household, right? So essentially, everything was going pretty good for Joseph. Even though he was a slave, he was in charge of this guy's whole household. And so he had a pretty good life, except for the fact that Potiphar's wife had the hots for him. Seriously. And so she repeatedly tried to get his attention until one day she's like, look, she's so bold. She's like, come to bed with me. And he runs off, but she has a hold of his cloak. And so she accuses him of being the one trying to take advantage of her, tells it to her husband. Her husband throws Joseph in prison. And so here he is sitting in prison, falsely accused of this. He's an innocent man sitting in prison. That has got to be a hard pill to swallow. And here he is, he's sitting there, but God actually uses this whole unfair situation for good and for Joseph's promotion. And we don't often think about prison being a promotion, but that's really what it was. He went to prison, he found favor with the warden there, and the warden put him in charge of the entire prison. He learned how to lead people in prison. So this prison was his promotion. He's learning how to lead. Remember back, still his dream. He's eventually going to be leading people. And so here it is where he's learning how to lead people. And then while he's in prison, he meets these two guys. And these guys, the cupbearer and the baker, they both have dreams. Joseph can interpret dreams. And so he interprets their dreams. It doesn't go so well for the baker, and you'll have to just read the whole story to get it. But for the cupbearer, he was going to be getting out of prison. And so in verse 14, Joseph is telling him, so when it all goes well with you, remember me and show me kindness. Mention me to Pharaoh and get me out of this prison. I was forcefully carried out from the land of the Hebrews, and even here I have done nothing to deserve being put in a dungeon. And I wish I could say that the cupbearer got out of prison and remembered Joseph, and Joseph was able to live life again, but he didn't. Because in verse 1 of Genesis 41, it says that when 2 full years had passed. So Joseph is sitting in this prison for 2 more years. 2 years is a long time, especially after all the heartache he's already been through. 2 more years sitting in this prison, knowing he shouldn't be there, that he didn't do anything wrong, and he's sitting there. But again, it says that the Lord was with Joseph. The Lord was with Joseph in that prison. The Lord is with us in our different types of prisons that we tend to find ourselves in. The Lord is with us, and we can find comfort in that. And Joseph found comfort in that. So it says, after the 2 years, Pharaoh had a dream. And so all of a sudden, here's Pharaoh. He has this dream. He's trying to get people to interpret this dream. I don't know what it means. And so the cupbearer finally has the aha moment. Oh my gosh, I remember this guy. He's in prison. He can interpret dreams. And so it says, in verse 14, it says, so Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and he was quickly brought from the dungeon. When he had shaved and changed his clothes, he came before Pharaoh. Now listen, when it is the right time, when it's God's time, it's quick time. So when it was time for Joseph to get out of that prison, it happened. It says Pharaoh quickly brought him out of that dungeon. Quickly. So if you're sitting in a place where you've just been waiting and waiting and waiting on God, keep waiting on God, keep honoring him, and be obedient in the season, because when it's God's time, it's going to be quick. It's going to be suddenly. It's going to happen. You're not going to have to question. And so quickly he was brought before Pharaoh. And Joseph interprets the dream. He tells him, hey, we're going to have 7 years of plenty, and then there's going to be 7 years of famine. You got to save up when it's plenty so that we have food during the famine. And so Pharaoh tells him this in verse 39. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has made all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you. So Joseph goes from prison to the second most powerful man in all of Egypt. That's incredible. That's a promotion like you never would imagine, going from prison to being right under Pharaoh. And so during this time, we see the dream, Pharaoh's dream, come about where they have plenty, and then now they're in a famine. And so all of a sudden, here comes Joseph's brothers. And so, we see, and like I said, we would be here all day long if we read this whole story, but the brothers come to get food because the famine is so bad. They meet up with one another. It's a big, long story, but we find ourselves in Genesis 50:20, where Joseph is having a conversation with his brothers. And in this moment, his brothers are actually really scared because Joseph, they're thinking he's going to retaliate on them, is really what they're thinking. And this is so beautiful, and it's really a forgiving statement of Joseph towards his brothers. But it says this, you intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. He's telling them, look, I know you intended to harm me. I know you were out to get me. You hated me. I get it. But you know what? But God, he's used all of this. God didn't purposely do this to Joseph, but he used what was happening in Joseph's life to bring about good and to save the lives of the entire nation and the nations around them. Like his brothers were coming from another nation because the famine was so great. And so here he is telling them, look, I get it, but God. He held on to the but God. And I know for me, this verse really hits home for me because I've lived through the you intended to harm me. And I know a lot of us in this room have. But I grew up poor, very, very poor. We lived in a trailer park in Arkansas. And just to tease on Arkansas for a second, look, that whole stereotype, barefoot, living in a trailer in Arkansas, that's like a real thing. We grew up pretty barefoot. We've run around barefoot all day long. But we were so poor. Oh my gosh. Like having bean soup for the 1,000th time. Because it's all we had. Living in this trailer park with a drug addict dad that was in and out of jail my whole childhood. No kid should ever have to visit their dad in jail. And back in the day, it was actually kind of a nice setup, if you could call jail a nice setup, is when we visited, they had this grassy little courtyard. So we'd play games with all the dads that were in jail. I remember other kids that were there in this family day. But no kid should ever have to do that. And then my parents divorcing and being so poor for a while. There were 5 kids at the time. Me and 4 other siblings lived in a van, parked in someone's driveway. And then my mom married into a family that I would suffer sexual abuse and pornography exposure for 11 years. And at 16, running away from home to get away from it all. And in that moment, though, I see a but God, just in that moment alone. Because when I ran away from home, the system really failed me in this situation, because rather than investigating and doing what they really needed to do, I was sent to foster care until we sorted things out and they sent me home. But I remember at 16 years old being terrified, driving in the police car to a house at like 10 o'clock at night, not knowing where in the world I was going, and having a history of abuse. You're not sure, what am I walking into? Where am I going to be staying? Who are these people? I have no idea. But God, in this moment, I kid you not, it was the biggest but God, because we pull up to this house and it was a family from my church. That's crazy. What an amazing but God in that moment. I was completely terrified in that police car, not knowing where I was going, and to see a familiar face in that moment, wow, what an incredible but God for me. But because of the system failing in that situation, no one got in trouble but me. And so I was put on probation at 16 and had to visit with my probation officer at school in the cafeteria in front of all my friends. That does a lot for a 16-year-old self-esteem. I mean, crazy. And then I decided, I actually found out on the school bus that I could move and go live with my drug addict dad. The things you find out on the school bus, like, I don't recommend the school bus to anybody. If you can drive your kids to school, please drive your children to school. But on the school bus, I find out, hey, I could actually move out. I could go live with my drug addict dad. That's a great idea, Sarah. So move in with my drug addict dad. Oh, man. I had a sister-in-law, or not a sister-in-law, a stepsister that just hated me. I have no idea why, but she hated me, like literally hated me. I would come home from school and my clothes would be out in the yard. She just piled in a pile. I had very few things. When I moved in with my dad, I had very few things from my childhood, but a couple of the things were keepsakes from my grandmother that I've never seen since then. And I'm pretty sure she had something to do with that. But, you know, living with him and all the drug buddies in and out of the house, and I mean, walking in the house, I have never smoked marijuana myself. But y'all, I know the smell, and I seriously just like walking into a house full of it, where I had to escape just so I wouldn't get a high from being in the same room as all of them. Like, it just was crazy. And then, you know, marrying the man of my dreams. Like, seriously, y'all, I fell in love with Joel Brown at 12 years old. I just had the biggest crush on him, starting at 12 years old. It was crazy. It's cheesy. I get it. But, you know, eventually he noticed me and we got married. But it was not the dream I had in mind. It was not that movie fairy tale that I dreamed of. because then I went through so much trauma because of his rage and anger issues and his control issues. Oh my gosh, walking on eggshells all the time. And is this going to set him off? Is this going to set him off? I better not say this. And oh, so much trauma. And then eventually, living through rejection, like a season where he just wanted nothing to do with me. All of that, all of it. I was spending some time with a friend not too long ago, and I'm not sure exactly how we got on some of this, of my story, but she just looked at me and she said, but look how far you've come. And I can honestly say, Sarah Brown had nothing to do with it. It was all but God. It was all but God. Like, listen, yes, I walked through that you intended to harm me season of my life, but God, I know that I'm only standing here because of God. I know that all those things I walked through as a child, all the things as an adult, being married, all of it, God is using for good to accomplish what's now taking place, and people's lives are being changed because of it. So I know that I would not have the platform that I have with our city. Like when the city manager and the chief of police and other city officials know your name, like that's not going to happen without a but God. And it's all because of the work that we do in our community, where we're going out and we're serving people and we're serving kids. And I know that the reason I'm so just passionate about reaching these kids is because I've walked through what they're walking through. Like, I've walked through my dad in jail, in and out. I've walked through sexual abuse and not having food to eat and living in the worst of conditions. Like, I've walked through it. And so I know because of that is why being in the community and being able to reach out to these kids and them knowing that I really do love them. Like, they know it. They see it. I've actually never told any of them hardly any of the story. I've never shared it with this church. Little bits and pieces with different people here and there. But they just know that I care for them because of what I've walked through. Being able to sit down with other wives who are having issues within their marriage and being able to sit on the couch and cry with them and I understand what you're going through, but listen, there's hope. Because Jesus is all about restoration and he's all about healing. And I can honestly say, I never would have signed up for my childhood. I wouldn't have. Just like Joseph, just like, if our lives were a movie script, I would not have signed up to be the lead character in my life. But I'm standing here now and I'm okay. Like, I really am. Like, I'm good. I'm okay with the fact that I had to walk through those things because now I see what God is doing because of it and through it. And I see how people's lives are being changed because of it. And so all of us have this but God happening in our lives right now. All of us. Whether it's in a season where you're going through some pain and hurt, or it may not be that at all. Life might be going really good for you right now. There's still a but God happening because God is always working. There's always a meanwhile going on. As we're living life, there's always something God's working on. Because I'll tell you this, back 8 years ago, almost 9 years ago, Joel and I, we're living the life in Northwest Arkansas. We had great jobs. We were a part of a great church. We loved the church. The church loved us. Like, we were just living the life. until God started messing with us, until there was a gigantic but God. And all of us are sitting in this room because of a gigantic but God. Like none of us would be here right now. You wouldn't even be watching online if there wasn't this gigantic but God in the midst of a really good season. And so we have a choice to make. Are we going to be aware of the but gods that are happening in our lives right now? Like our eyes need to be wide open to what God is doing. What is the but God that he's doing right now? And then here's a really specific key, because I'll tell you, God is not obligated to turn all your junk of your past into good. He's not. And I think some of us will grab a hold of Romans 8:28 and we'll think it applies to everybody on earth, and it doesn't. Romans 8:28 specifically says that God will turn all things to good for those who love him and are called according to his purpose. Not just everybody. He's not obligated to change all your junk to good if you're not in relationship with him. Like, that's the hinging point, is being in relationship with God. But when we're in relationship, just like Joseph was, he was in relationship with God. It said back when Potiphar's wife was coming after him, it said, I'm not going to sin against God. Like, he honored God. And it said the Lord was with him. And because of that, there's this huge but God in his life. For me, I'm telling you, even though I went through the life I went through, thank God, my mother, even in her faults, kept me in church. And I had a relationship with God throughout my life, because that was a huge hinging point to the but God in my life. Having a relationship with him. And so that's huge. You have to have that relationship. He's not obligated, like I said, to fix all your problems when you're not in relationship with him. But there's a but God happening for each one of us. God is trustworthy. The same God that helped Joseph and was the but God in his story is the same for you and I. Hebrews 13:8 says that Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Listen, there is hope. Just the phrase, but God, is filled with so much hope. Can you hear it? Like, can you feel that? When we say, but God, like everybody online say, but God. Like, do you feel it? Like, do you need to say it 100 more times just to, like, get it? Like, I can feel the hope. There's hope to it. No matter what your situation is, there's hope with a but God. And so this morning, I want to ask everybody to bow your heads. And I'm not sure if you're in a season right now and online, if you're going through a season of, you intended to harm me, the hurt, the pain, or if you're in a season of, man, life is great. Whatever season you're in, there's a but God happening right now. And if you've never given your life to Christ and you realize that, hey, that verse doesn't apply to me yet because I haven't actually surrendered my life to him. I haven't said, hey, God, I don't want to do this on my own anymore. I need your help. I need salvation. I need you to save me. Now, I'm living in You intended to harm me, and I need help. I need saving. I see my need of you. Like, if you're in this moment where you just know now is the time. Don't wait. Now is the time. God's time is quick time. It's right now. Don't wait. If you have not surrendered your life to him, now is the time. Just surrender. Jesus, I need you. I know that I need you to lead me and to guide me. Forgive me. And maybe you've been in the place of you've walked through so much hurt and so much pain, and you just cannot even see the next step in front of you. Now is just the moment to surrender to that there is a but God, and that you can trust him. You can trust him to turn all the pain and the hurt into good. That he's going to accomplish amazing things through all the heartache. That he still has a future and a hope for you. Just declare your trust to him right now. Maybe life's good. Maybe you're just living the good life, and maybe God's starting to mess with you in a certain situation like he did with us, where he just started speaking these things where it just sounded like, oh, God, you're doing something new. Okay, what is this? And you just haven't really been welcoming of it. And God's trying to say, hey, I'm doing a new thing. Like, can you perceive it? Can you see what I'm doing? Like, get on board with this. And you just need to take the moment to surrender to getting on board with what God is saying. He's throwing a but God in there. Maybe making the season a little uncomfortable. But I'm telling you that in this moment, if you will surrender to the but God, it's going to be an amazing ride. Because Joel and I never imagined we would ever leave Northwest Arkansas and a church we loved. But we're here, and you can't drag us out of this place. God has an amazing plan if you'll surrender to it. And Lord, I thank you so much for your love for us. God, I thank you for the but God in my life. Over and over and over, the but gods. Thank you that you love me. And thank you that you've worked all those things to good to accomplish what you're doing right now. And so, God, we give you all the praise and all the glory for what you're doing. In Jesus' name, amen. Online, thank you for joining us today. Can we give God some praise for what he's doing in our lives?